You know, country music has been around for as long as I can remember, but it hasn't always been called country music. As a matter of fact, it's been known by several names: hillbilly, western. You know, it's even been called gully jumping music. But it all got started back in the 1920s from what they called old-time music. Now, back in the 20s, there were a number of early performers who recorded this old-time music. Artists like Vernon Delhart, Fiddlin' John Carson, and Uncle Dave Macon. But the man who was to change the entire course of country music history and to become the first great country star was the singing brakeman, Jimmie Rodgers. Well, I'll tell you a story of Jimmy the Kid. He's a brakeman you all know. He was born in Mississippi way down south, and he flagged on the TNNO. Well, they treated him good and they treated him bad, though he never done any wrong. He yodeled a yodel that everybody knows. It's the yodeling brakeman song. Jimmie Rodgers, he was born in 1897 in Meridian, Mississippi. The son of a railroad foreman, his mother died when he was 4 years old, and so Jimmy was raised by his father, living in poor boarding houses and railroad shanties in the freight yards of the South. He learned to play guitar as a young man, but for 14 years, he earned his living as a brakeman on the railroad. Then one day, tragedy struck. He collapsed while at work, and it was later learned that Jimmie Rodgers had tuberculosis. His railroading days were over, and it was then that he turned to his music. In no time at all, he created his own style of guitar playing. He invented a sort of a blues yodel. He started to write songs that were soon to make him world famous. And here's one of those songs. See if you remember this one. Well, now Frankie and Johnny were sweethearts. Lordy, how they did love. They swore to be true to each other, just as true as the stars above. But he was her man. They wouldn't do him no wrong. Well, as soon as he was well enough, Jimmy started out performing. Though his first ventures failed, on August the 4th, 1927, in Bristol, Tennessee, everything changed. On that day, Jimmy took his guitar and made a test recording in an old warehouse. It was enough to encourage the RCA Victor Talking Machine Company into making another recording with Jimmy. This time it was in Camden, New Jersey. And here he cut a song that he called his Blue Yodel. It was called T for Texas. When it was released, it took the record world by storm. T for Texas, T for Tennessee. Well, it's T for Texas, T for Tennessee. Well, it's T for Thelma, that gal that made a wreck out of me. Yodel-o-lo-lo-lo. In less than a year after that first big hit, T for Texas, Jimmie Rodgers moved from being a poor country boy who was bumming across the South playing for handouts and gas money to the #1 entertainer in North America. Now, we have to remember that Jimmie Rodgers had no idols to follow, no established stars to imitate. He had to create all his own directions. But this new kind of music that he was creating, his railroad songs, his barroom ballads, and those blues songs, these songs spoke to the heart and to the hopes of a world caught in the grip of a Great Depression. For the first time in history, here was a man who could put into musical form the thoughts, the smiles, and the tears of the common man. All around the water tank, waiting for a train. I'm 1,000 miles away from home, sleeping in the rain. Well, I walked up to a break just to give him a line of talk. He says, if you've got the money, I'll see that you don't walk. Well, I haven't got a nickel, not a penny, can I show? He He said, get off, you railroad bum, and he slammed the boxcar door. I had a friend named Campbell. He used to rob, steal, and gamble. He tried everything that was low down. And he was out tomcatting one night when he got into a big fight. But that old policeman came and knocked him down. He's in the jailhouse now. He's in the jailhouse now. I told him over again to quit drinking whiskey, lay off of that gin. He's in the jailhouse now. Good morning, Captain. Good morning, child. Good morning, Captain. Good morning, child. Do you need another mule skinner on your new mud line? Hey, hey, little water boy, bring that bucket around. Well, hey, little water boy, won't you bring that bucket around? And if you don't like your job, you can set that bucket down. Though these songs brought Jimmy success and fame, they could never defeat his old enemy. One day at the height of his popularity, tuberculosis struck again. He was hospitalized and told he must have complete rest. But in 1933, Jimmy said goodbye to his family and journeyed to New York for what was to be his final recording session. He had wanted to travel by train, but in his weakened condition, the doctor insisted that he take a steamship up the coast in hopes that the sea air might be of some benefit. Before he left, Jimmy had told his family that if he couldn't travel up to New York by train, then he would most certainly ride it back home. Little did he realize how true that was going to be. In New York, he recorded his last 12 songs. And he was so weak he had to rest on a cot between trips to the microphone. And on May the 25th, he collapsed for the final time. His career was over after only 5 short years. Jimmy's body was carried home aboard one of the trains that he loved so well. Though it traveled by night all along the route from New York State to Mississippi, thousands upon thousands of people lined the tracks as it passed them by. And each in his own way was paying tribute to this man who had touched their lives and who had altered the very course of musical history. 30 years later, in 1961, when the Country Music Hall of Fame was opened in Nashville, Tennessee, Jimmie Rodgers was elected as its first member. His tribute reads, "The father of country music, the man who started it all." I'll tell you the story of Jimmy the Kid. He's the brakeman you all know. He was born in Mississippi way down south, and he flagged on the TNNO.